And welcome to Kid and Friends podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Joseph Drolshagen, a mindset powerhouse and founder of LFGT Life Coaching. After 28 years climbing the corporate ladder, Joey walked away from a six-figure VP gig to help people break free from burnout, fear, and limiting beliefs. He's the creator of the SMT method, a system that rewires your subconscious so you can build success on your terms without the grind. He's coached tens of thousands, been featured on NBC, CBS, and USA Today, and lives what he teaches, whether he's coaching high performers or hanging off gliders on mountaintops. He's ready for straight talk, big breakthroughs, and real tools to shift your life. How are you, man? Nice to meet you.
It's great, Christopher. Great to be here with you. Same thing, man. Looking forward to a powerful conversation.
Yeah, I went on a couple of podcasts that you were on, and it's interesting listening to your story. It sounds like you grew up in Detroit as part of a blue collar family, and then eventually found your way to what you're doing now. And when, I don't know if it was you or your folks reached out and said, "Hey, we'd like to talk," my response was, "I don't really care about the business stuff so much. I always want to find out about the person. For me, the accolades are great, but I want to hear about the person who got to that." And usually getting to those accolades usually requires a little bit of time on the field to become a good coach. So I would love to hear your story. And I think if we start at your childhood in Detroit, that'll probably take us in the right direction.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, as far as business growth, things like that, that's all the vehicle. The
Yeah.
core of what I do is personal transformation, personal development, helping people
Okay.
identify, unlock, what the potential in their life. So yeah, absolutely. And I did. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I'm one of four children with my mom and dad. And growing up, man, I watched my mom and dad struggle like crazy just to make ends meet, and the stress and
Yeah.
anxiety. And my dad would work himself into needing operations and things like that, and the
Really?
works he did and stuff. Yeah. And
What did he do for a living?
he operated heavy equipment, operated
Okay.
cranes and things like that and stuff, and he would just
Yeah.
beat himself up working. His whole thing was, I'll work as many hours as I possibly can. And that was his number one thing, and he would work day and night and stuff. And they still gave us a good life, but I just
Yeah.
watched that struggle from early on. I watched at times growing up where my aunts and uncles would bring over bags of groceries and stuff so my mom and dad could
Yeah.
make it by, because my dad beat himself up and then would need surgery and be off of work. It was just, yeah.
So it's a vicious cycle of him working his ass off for his family and then paying for it at the same time.
Yes, yes. And even at 9 years old, I went and stayed a weekend at a friend's house, and his dad gave us $20 and he goes, "Take your bikes up to Dairy Queen." My family, we had to save up to do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's crazy how things were different back in the day. And I would guess we're probably not far off in age from each other. So you're probably Generation X, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Gen X.
Times were different back then. Parents that were different, if you look back to the 1920s, dad would go to work all day, not interact with the family, come home, have dinner, and go to bed or whatever he's going to do. Yeah. But then our generation of parents worked really hard, and we were probably the first generation where parents couldn't really afford everything on a one-income lifestyle.
Yes.
And if you're like me, like I remember my mom staying home until I was somewhere in my early, like maybe 10 or 11, she got a job. Yeah. And we didn't do a lot of vacations. We didn't do a whole lot of stuff. We always had what we needed to have, but we didn't live an extravagant lifestyle. And to your point, like every now and then you would go over to that other kid's house. Like I remember ColecoVision, the video game back in the day. It was out the same time as PlayStation, or not PlayStation, but Atari. I remember going over to my friend's house and they were playing Othello, I think was the game on it. And I just remember thinking like, wow, these kids are living a whole different life than me. And, it was like a $900 play system back in the day. So you're living.
At my friend's house, when I went over there, it was a different energy in the house. So when I went back home after the weekend, it was like, man, something's not right here. And I remember as that little kid going, you guys aren't living right. And I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to live this way.
Right. And did your mom work as well?
Kid. My mom. So after a while, my mom would do court reporting, like dictating and things like that, or copying, and she would work from the time we went to bed until we got up and went to school in the morning.
Wow. So you had really hardworking parents, but at the same time,
top of that, My dad would
Yeah.
take us fishing. He'd take us camping. Every year we had a pop-up camper. We'd try and go with 7 people in Upper Peninsula, Michigan for 2 weeks of vacation and break down and all these things that ended up being great memories and stuff. So they really
Yeah.
leaned into us as well, the best they could,
So you had really loving parents who loved
Absolutely.
doing what they
Yeah.
could for you, and as a result of that, your dad overworked himself.
Yeah. My
And
mom.
so as a child, what was your self-talk? Like, I don't want to have a blue collar job like this, or I want something
I
better
just
for
didn't want to live
myself.
like they lived, but I
Yeah.
grew up hearing, that a man gets a job, supports a family, and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some retirement, and that was the whole
Yeah.
thing. And that was my whole family, from my grandpa's, aunts, uncles, uncles, all that and stuff. They all worked blue collar, and
Yeah.
they all followed that pathway. They'd try and get a job in one of the big three, work in the factory, doing something and kind of work as many hours as they possibly could, and then,
Right.
live until retirement came.
Well, I remember conversations with my parents. They're like, it was basically the goal was to be average. That was the conversation.
Mhm.
You know, grow up, get a decent job, have a decent family, live a decent life. And nothing about, mindset or being mindful about anything you do or thinking your way through life.
Yeah.
The parents of our generation didn't, and they still don't, I don't think, is share the mentality of how to be a person. Right, like we focus so much on book smarts in school. We don't teach people life smarts, and the stuff that you're sharing with folks is the life smart stuff. And I don't know if that's even the right word or if it's a term
Well,
for
I
it.
mean, it makes sense. It fits.
Yeah, right. So like
Yeah.
there's like the word mindful or the word mindset, like none of that was really a thing until like maybe the last 10 or 12 years.
Yeah. A
And
little longer, but yeah.
yeah, maybe 15, 20 years, but it was never a thing as I was a child, and it was not ingrained anywhere in my parents. So what was your pathway out of Detroit?
I started out in Detroit. Then we moved to the suburbs when I was a kid, and then from there it kind of ended up. I stayed in Michigan for a long time. I was told multiple times too in school and stuff like that by multiple teachers and by my mom a lot, trying to help me avoid disappointment because I had big visions for my life. I wanted to be a police officer.
Yeah,
I wanted to do something, and they would say, some people are meant to work with their head and some people are meant to work with their hands, and you're going to work with your hands. So my script was
really?
already laid out. When I get out of school, I get into a factory and I start doing, the blue collar thing and stuff like that. And I'm not
Yeah,
opposed to that. I have so much respect for people who do that
sure.
because my whole family lineage comes from that and stuff. So it's not negative. But I remember at 22 years old is when I started realizing those patterns are playing out in my life. I was
Yeah,
working full time. I had a lawn company I was doing pretty much full time.
all right.
And no matter what happened, I still struggled financially. I had an offer from a guy that I became friends with, and he was an older guy, and he had a construction company that did millions of dollars of revenue every year. He was going to give
Yeah.
me the company, and I wasn't even going to take any money out of my pocket. I was just going to pay him over 5 years because he saw the sales ability in me before I ever got into sales or wanted to do sales.
Okay.
He saw
Based on
that
your personality and
he
how you
saw that
interacted with folks.
possibility. So, I mean, what a chance of a lifetime giving me
Yeah.
this over $1 million business, and over a 3 day period, I ended up saying no to that. And the reason what caused me to do that, Christopher, is I felt I didn't work hard enough for it, so I didn't deserve it.
That's fair enough.
And I let that pass. And then after the realm of all that passing and everything hit me, it was like, man, there's something seriously wrong with me. And that started the pathway at 22 years old that I'm still on today. I
Yeah.
ended up breaking so many of those records of what people said I could do. I was the first child in my family with a bachelor's degree. I was the first one to break into white collar. I ended up
Wow.
building a career up to a vice from this ground floor of sales all the way up to a vice president of sales in organizations, and then helping companies that were in bankruptcy get back to profitability. So I'm breaking these records, but for a
Yeah.
long time I was still that same kid with that same modeling, believing in those things I was told that I meant to work with my hands. That if I,
And
if
those are the
that I
limitations
have to
other folks put on you.
I have to work hard to deserve what I get in my life. I remember
Yeah.
hearing multiple times, you're going to struggle for everything you get in life. So often that I believe that. So if something wasn't a struggle, I thought I somehow cheated or didn't do it right.
Right. Or it would slip through your fingers. in a real quick way because it was never meant to be.
which is, we call today self-sabotage,
Yeah.
you
So
know,
so
and
you're pretty self-aware at a young age of your thought processes,
boy,
or
I
was it
would
more
not describe it
subconscious?
that way.
Okay.
I would describe it as I knew I was broken and I couldn't figure out why, but I didn't want to be broken. And that led
Yeah.
me on this pathway. And for what, 3 decades, I
Right.
continued to study. I was a guinea pig, you know, I continued to study and look at different things. And I took different programs. When The Secret came out, I had what is it? The VHS, because I'm that
Yeah.
old. I had the book. I even found some workbooks someplace that I bought, and I leaned into that, man. Did the best of my ability,
Yeah.
and I was probably the most positive person that I knew. But I
Right.
didn't change my results. So then I
Was
started
it
going
was
into
it
reading.
empty or was it for show at the
What?
time when you were that most positive person?
I
Was it
thought
was
I
it
could
truly who you
pretend.
were?
Well, I mean, I've always been pretty optimistic and stuff, but
Yeah.
it was heightened. It was way heightened beyond,
Okay.
because I thought that's what would get me there. Then I thought that
Yeah.
would break that mold.
Exaggerate it.
And then I started going into coaching programs and I would read a book and I'd read it through. And then I would go back and create experiments out of the book and spend 4 months, 5 months, 6 months experimenting with this book. And I didn't find changes. And I went into coaching
Yeah.
programs and the same thing happened and stuff. And then I happened to stumble along because all this time now I'm in sales in corporate America. I'm doing sales and I'm busting my hump at 3 to 5,000 miles a week traveling, trying to
Yeah.
develop territories. And I'm barely skinning the surface with anything as far as what
Right.
I'm
You have
getting as far
barely
as
time to
return on that.
breathe probably, and you're a lot of
Yeah.
time on the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you staying
And
in a lot of
I was on
hotels
this.
at the time?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, every Monday through, get home on Friday,
Yeah. So there's
and
no
so,
time for life or self-development during that other than what you're reading in your
no.
books.
Yeah, I was married for 19 years. When I was in my late 20s, my then wife and I were pregnant 2 times and lost the
Yeah.
baby at 24, 25 weeks. It was born,
Wow.
died, stuff like that. Then my son was born. Then we had two more pregnancies like the first two. So it was just, I mean, so emotional. So
Yeah.
when I say my son, I adore my son. Out of everything I went through in order to be a father,
All
on
right.
his first birthday, I wasn't home celebrating his first birthday with him. I was in Indiana trying to develop a territory. And I
So
remember the
you were
pain I
much like
felt.
your dad at the time, but in a different way,
Work came
right?
first. And I
Yeah.
remember driving and I'd have to stop it. We'd just get tears in my eyes, like how, how much I adore him, but not being able to be there. And people said, well, you could have been there. Well, no, I couldn't, because my
Yeah.
programming told me I couldn't be there because I'd be doing the wrong thing.
Wow.
And so I
And it's
missed that.
interesting too because we don't when we're working in that we miss out on everything else. And I have a friend who describes me as a Dungeons and Dragons character, and I put all my points in the fighting because I told you I own a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school.
Yeah.
I think life is like that. Like you only have so many points to put into so many different things. If you're a highly successful person over here in, say, finance or business over here, you're probably not very successful over in this family area. And there's going to be spots missing throughout that. And sometimes when we
Imbalance.
yeah, there's an imbalance. And when you're not,
Yeah.
you can't focus on everything at once, but if you focus on something too heavily, it's going to screw you up. But the conversations back in the day, and even when I was opening my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, the first conversation, anytime anybody said to me, well, every business closes within the first 6 months, most businesses. I'm like, I don't want to hear that, right? That's your fear you're trying to put on me to keep me from my success, which is what your parents did, which is what my parents did. And maybe they didn't acknowledge it as fear, but it was safe. And
It was.
I am much like you, where I lived a life of fear for years until I realized I was like, I don't really fucking care about whatever this is.
Yeah.
And why is this stopping me from doing what I'm doing? And
Yep.
like, I look back at different moments in my life. Oh, fear stopped me here. Fear stopped me there. Fear kept me from kissing that girl. Fear kept me from asking
Yeah.
that girl out or going for this job or doing everything, right?
Yeah.
I listen to some podcasts, and fear seems like it's an interesting thing that you talk about, where it's one of our biggest limiting things.
Yeah, absolutely. So now I'm going through this. I'm trying coaching programs, and I'm really diving into them with everything I got, and I'm walking away going, I learned some stuff, but it didn't change anything in my results.
Yeah.
And then I came upon the book, The Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy,
Okay.
and I started reading that. And he talks about the programming, and he talks about the way, our subconscious programming. What I ended up finding through this process here is the subconscious is what triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So if I have a
Yeah.
lack mentality, I'm not going to take the actions that are going to break that lack and move me into abundance, wealth, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
If I have that programming in there that I got to work my ass off in order to get ahead, that's the only way I'm going to do it. So then I
Yeah.
started looking at that. Then I found somebody that could help me. And this is like a decade and a half into it. Now I'm 36 years old, 35, 36 years old. And I still haven't even scratched the surface. I don't even know, honestly, what kept me going into it,
Right.
after that long. But so now I get somebody that helps me do that. All of a sudden they start helping me identify that conditioning that I would not have been able to pick up for myself because
Yeah.
it felt so natural to me to live like that.
Right.
So then they start identifying that. Then they could kind of help me a little bit. But then I started figuring out, okay, so how do I change this now? Now I'm aware of it, right? I see that
Yeah.
pattern for limitedness. How do I change it? And then I continued studying and things like that. And somewhere around 40, 41 years old, all of a sudden, I was able to start changing that.
Your
And
vision changed.
within a year, maybe less than a year and a half, I went from barely scraping by in sales, always constantly afraid I'm going to lose my job because I'm not producing enough, things like that,
Yeah.
to landing an $18 million year-over-year contract, and then a
Wow.
$22 billion contract. And then the largest one was a $25 million company or year-over-year contract that
Yeah.
took a company from $50 to $75 million overnight with that contract. And now all of a sudden, it's like things are busting open for me. And instead of
Right.
it feeling like I don't deserve, all of a sudden I started getting
Yeah.
excited about that, and I started applying more of the tools and things like that. Then from there, I moved into managing sales teams, and I started using those same tools because I'm just going to use this. Not we're talking about business, but typically in a sales team, you got a couple top producers, the guys that are really
Sure.
kicking ass, and then everybody, and then you got that middle rung of people. That middle
Yep.
rung is so overlooked because they think, well, they're not top producers, but they want to be. They don't know what's stopping them. So
Yeah.
now I started working with my sales teams and doing it. As I'm doing it, I'm developing this SMT method without even having a plan to develop a method. And so
Right.
I'm going forward in that and such. And then the whole thing, I mean, I couldn't tell you how it happened because so much of it was outside of what I would have planned to happen anyways. And it started
Yeah.
coming together. And then as I helped the last organization that was in bankruptcy get back to profitability, and honestly, Christopher, that every gray hair I have came from that. That is such a tough
Okay.
life, man. And then I said, okay, I'm done. And I
Yeah.
left. I moved down here to the mountains of South Carolina and literally started going out every day and handing out 5 business cards, introducing myself, and started building this business to what it is today from there.
Wow. And it's interesting too, like when you talk about sales in general is tough. And I'm not talking like low dollar sales. Like when you have multi-million-dollar sales territory, you're only as good as whatever the last month ended at. And then you start out every month as a piece of garbage again. And then you have to earn your way back up to that one day where you get a little bit of acknowledgement. So it's always a roller coaster going up and down, up and down, and up and down. Where, let's say you're working a cashier, there's no the job sucks, but you don't have that mental part of it where you're being treated a certain different way. And I think with sales managers, they're not intentionally treating you that way. But that's the mindset where, what are you going to do for me now? And if you're not willing to go that extra mile in everything you do, you're not going to be as successful. Or if you don't have that right mindset. And some guys will take a no. And again, it wasn't supposed to be a business call, but that's fine. Like, and you can apply that in life. You can take that no and just walk home and be miserable and accept it, or you can find another way around it, or figure out what's limiting you. So you're starting to see all these things that are kind of opening themselves up to you that you hadn't seen before. And I always describe, you probably have this store, Spencer's, in your malls out there. Do you remember the digital posters where you just had to kind of stare at them for a while? And it would just sit on the wall and there's nothing there. And you're like, all right, just relax your eyes. And then you relax your eyes and you're like, oh, there's a boat up here.
Yes.
Okay. And now there's a ship over here and there's a lighthouse down here in the picture. And now you always see them. So it's not that the picture changed. It's your mindset on how you were looking at the world or looking at the picture.
Great
Now you
analogy,
see these things and now you can't unsee them. And now things start to piece themselves together for you. And it starts making more sense, it sounds like.
Yeah. And so as the pieces are coming together, and I really didn't fully understand it at first. I knew what I was doing because I was one of the changes I made is I started living more consciously without, like, I guess I did do it by plan. It's like, okay, if all these things are happening, I'm not even aware of them. If I start living consciously, if I start notice what I'm noticing, if I look at where my thoughts are coming from or what they're telling me and things like that, now all of a sudden I can start picking those up more readily. And then as I did that, then developing the tools to shift that programming on the subconscious level. You know, because one of the things, the subconscious, 85% of our results is determined by the programming in the subconscious.
Yeah, so because it's a fear of, there's a lot of fight versus flight that goes on in your head in a very subtle manner on a daily basis that you may or may not be aware of. And most people are not aware of those things that are holding them back.
Yes. So then once I got to that, once I started seeing that change, once it started happening, then my first testing of it was when I started leading sales teams. Because, you know, what happens when you do great in sales is they promote you to leading sales, you know, and that's exactly
they give you more work.
Well, yeah. And so then I started using that on my with my teams, and I could see those people in the middle rung start making, you know, elevating upward and stuff like that. I've used it people personal transformation. I've used it across the board, really. And when we start identifying people with relationships, people and how with their finances, things like that, when we start noticing and shifting that programming, all of a sudden it starts opening up the door. So our conscious mind is our knowing of what we want, right? The subconscious is what triggers the brainwaves to the actions we take or don't take. So if I don't have the programming to allow the knowing to happen, I'm always going to have a disconnect there. My mentor, late Bob Proctor, taught me this. Is so what it does when we identify and shift that programming is it starts bringing alignment. So now we know what we want. We're taking the actions to lead to that, and all of a sudden we start achieving greater results, whether it be building wealth, whatever it is, with less effort because we're not fighting the programming anymore.
Well, all the information's flowing in the same way. I think of it as like tubes, maybe, and there's fluid going through them. If you're here, you know, you're just shooting everything out the sides, but next thing you know, you put them together and it's all going in the same direction.
Yes.
So you're having all these epiphanies of how the world works and how people work, and it's changing the way you view people. And how do you decide to break away from the corporate world and start really working on human transformation and getting people into this place? Is it a big leap for you? Because it sounds like you were doing a lot of that ahead of time. And
huge. I walked away from
conversation.
Multi six-figure income with all the benefits and golf course and this and that and everything else to walk away into really nothing. I started getting certification, you know, my first certification of multiple that I have. I started working, you know, towards, like, I have a doctorate degree in psychology and things like that. But it was huge because I just resigned. When we got new owners, I said, okay, now I'm done. I promised to stay around till we got them. They're here.
Did you know this was your plan? Or was you were just burned out and you're like, I need a change?
Yeah, not completely. My dad passed away.
Okay.
Just over a year later, after a 56-year marriage, my mom passed away. She just didn't want to be alive without him. Natural causes, passed away. And now I find myself an orphan. I'm still going into corporate America. I'm still following that process that a man gets a job, supports a family. And
so you're feeling your dad's vibe still. It's still in you strongly, even though you have all these changes. Yeah.
And I finally just said, you know what? I feel this draw to help people live better lives, which I had from the time I was 20s. I thought I was going to be a pastor of a church or something like that, you know. And so I resigned and I walked off. And they even, I mean, it was so funny because they go, man, you can work from wherever you're going, you know, because I had you know, setting up down here in Mountain, South Carolina. They said you can work from there or anything else. And I think about it because it was a really good salary.
Yeah, let's just take put all your stress, put it in this wheelbarrow and wheel it over to wherever you're going.
Well, what happened is I was down here for about a week and a half. and I had a meeting for my business with the Chamber of Commerce here. And I was in there and my phone rang and it was the plant calling me.
Yeah.
And I felt that guilt, like I feel like I'm doing the wrong thing because I'm looking at and that was my decider. I said, nope, I'm cutting
Yeah.
bait. I'm done. Take your salary, whatever, and stuff.
It's tough how that works too, because I get about 6 weeks of vacation from my day job every year.
Mhm.
And I'll usually take off the middle of October, like maybe 2 days a week up until like the first week of December. And then I take off the whole month of December every year.
Yeah.
And I work every day. I work harder when I'm off than I do when I'm actually on the job. Yeah, it's so annoying. And I have people that can cover for me, but I have this thing in me that makes me want to make sure I take care of my customer, which also restricts me from taking that time for myself to reset my brain. So usually by the time I come back from vacation, I'm more excited to go back to work because it's less stressful for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to go through that because there's a balance there, right? Like
Yeah.
I only work with so many clients at a time because if somebody runs into something, I don't want them to wait till our next scheduled call. I want them to be able to pick up the phone and call me. So I limit how many clients I work with at a time to afford me to do that. But there are times when somebody's calling and I'm out on the trout fishing. I'm on my motorcycle. I'm just sitting outside with a cup of coffee, enjoying it. And it's like, okay, I'm going to have to call this person. And today I'm okay with doing that because of the reason
it's not the end of the world.
And I had to, because that was subconscious programming telling me, oh my God, you gotta be there, you gotta be there, you gotta be there, no matter what, and pushing things off. My son's down here visiting, who lives up in Michigan, and so I don't get to see him all that often. He's down here visiting, and I spend most of the time on the phone with clients who are calling me, and they have stuff going on. But at one point, I go, you know what? Listen, my son's here. Let me get back with you later this evening or tomorrow morning or something. And I started doing that, and it started to change that.
Right, your time that you spend with that person becomes better because you're mindful of what you're doing and you're mindful of the moment that you're in and you're embracing it at the time. Yes. Like cell phones, for example, are such a huge distraction. Whether I ride a motorcycle as well. I have a Street Glide, a Harley, and I love mine. What year's yours?
2014. Yours?
Mine's a 2024. I just traded in a Street Bob at the end of the year, and I just sold a Honda Goldwing I had. Oh, and okay. So we'll talk a little bit more on motorcycles. But like, I almost got killed at an intersection last night. I was making a left, and this girl on her phone shoots through the intersection, misses my front tire by maybe 2 feet, and goes 15 feet past me before she realizes she's in the middle of the intersection. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, she's so distracted on her phone that she's almost killed me. But we spend our lives like that. Like, I'll have my daughter, she lives in Baltimore, and she'll come up and visit for the weekend, but she'll spend like 95% of that time on her phone, my oldest daughter, and not interact with everybody. She's so worried about everything else that's going elsewhere. So you being mindful of like, hey, my son's coming to visit, and putting the phone down or the business away for when you need to, that changes your interactions and makes them much more valuable.
Oh yeah. Another thing with that is like with tomorrow being the 4th, I had 2 coaching sessions that happened on Friday. I have plans for tomorrow. I want to do something with somebody, and really special time and stuff. And so I was able to reach out to both of them and say, hey, can we reschedule a Saturday? Because I have plans for tomorrow with it being the holiday.
Yeah.
And I can do that today. When I first started coaching, I couldn't do that. I was so afraid of.
And that's another mindset thing, right?
It is. It absolutely, and it's based on that programming that's in there. Now, one of the things I want to talk about for a second, if I can, and kind of shift a little bit, is there's this SMT method, subconscious mindset training, right?
Yep.
There's millions of coaching programs out there. So one of the things I love to talk about is how I stand out. What makes me different than everybody else? And here's what it is. Most coaching programs have a model. And so the model is set and locked in. The individual comes in and they have to contort themselves to fit into that model.
It's like a small box and you're trying to fit yourself in.
The SMT method has a model that shifts to meet the uniqueness of every individual. Every individual is their unique gifts and talents, their unique desires, their unique programming, all of that.
Yeah.
The model shifts to suit them, not them have to shift to suit in the
So
program.
it shapes to what they need.
Yes. So every client I work with has a unique journey into this. Getting to coach with the clients I coach with, I get to see that
Yeah.
uniqueness applied to them, and how we do things like develop systems of accelerating habits, and things like that. And it's unique to every individual.
Right.
Even the tools that I teach
Yeah.
is a starting point. Here's the tool. Here's how I use it. Now, how do we customize this for you?
Right.
How will it best work for you?
Well, it's nice too when you learn how to use those tools, because some people are walking around in life with just a hammer and everything looks like a nail, and they treat everything the same exact way when you might need a screwdriver over here or you need this over there. And how did you come to that realization that having a blueprint wasn't the best idea?
By spending a lot of time, effort, resources, finances, everything else in so many different coaching programs trying to get the fix. And I'd walk away going without the results and thinking, like I
Yeah.
said, I've gone through a lot of them, some very, very, high investment ones as well. And I walked
Sure.
away from it learning stuff, but every one of them I walked away going, man, there must be something the matter with me, because I did not get these results. So what didn't I do
Right.
right? What did I miss? What did I, and in that mode, so often we look at life like that, and we look at it must be me, but it's not.
Yeah.
If somebody goes through a coaching program and you don't get results, there's something the matter with that program, not the person going through it.
Right. If you've
know?
put the serious time and effort into whatever that is and it doesn't work, that's a sure sign that they're just not the right selection for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so what I do is I do a really good job on the upfront side of it, because we're so conditioned. You talked about that. We're so conditioned that if you
Yeah.
want something, you find someone who has what you want, figure out what they did and do it. So we want to follow these people who made a success path and things like that. And then we want
Right.
to follow their path, but their path is unique to them. So
Yeah.
it's not going to ever work for me, because I'm not that person. And I can try to contort who I am, and I can try to be a mini me of that person and everything else, but it's still
Right.
not going to net me the results at net that person. So in
Yeah.
doing that over and over and over again, at some point, as I started developing this and as the SMT method started coming to fruition and coming to be, it was like I have to do this in a way that it's not my journey. It's not what got me here.
Yeah.
But what is it in the essence of it that would help somebody else do the same thing based on their uniqueness?
Yeah. And you can put it in the thought process of like someone who's an athlete. Right? Let's say like you're really good at running, right? But you're not good at catching. Like you're not going to coach that person on how to run better, especially if they're really good at that part of their life. They need help on the catching part. And then the next person you talk to might be really good at swinging a bat, but not the running part. And you don't need to teach them on that part. You need to help them in the areas that they need. So when you're figuring out how to help these people, is it an extensive interview process, and is it a lot of self discovery and honesty that these folks have to come to help identify these things? Because a lot of times we lie to ourselves, and we tell ourselves that, hey, this isn't really why I do this, or this isn't how I do it. But sometimes you look in the mirror and you're like, you know what? It's tough when you realize you're lying to yourself in certain areas of life.
A lot of times people don't even realize that's happening,
Yeah.
It's
that
a
subconscious
combination
part.
of both. So I have the method with the portal and all that stuff that we go through, and the whole program is set up to tap up against that patterns and programming in the subconscious so that we can identify it, the limitation, and then have the tools there to start to shift that and bring about results on the other side, and start opening up door to greater possibilities and potential in people's lives.
And is there something, and I know that one of the limiting factors that you talk about is fear. And do you find that is one of the most common things in people? Is that what's kind of holding them back?
Yeah, some sort
Right.
of fear,
And when
right?
I use the word
So
fear, it's not like you're scared of something. It's that subconscious telling you like, don't do that. It's not going to work out the way it should,
yeah,
or something along
yeah.
those lines.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll tell about like my clients' testimonials, which are written,
Yeah.
documented by them and stuff like that. Is like I've had clients. One in particular went from $7.5 million, 13-year high in business, within 12 months, toppled over $22 million. Now, a lot of
Wow.
people will go, "That's unrealistic." And for that person, they'll never ever achieve that. So when I'm looking for
Yeah.
clients I can help, not that people have to believe in everything and stuff like that, because we hear so much BS stuff going on and everything and stuff. But
Sure.
if we're totally closed mind to it, I can't help that person. So that's one of the
Right.
things I look for right out of the shoot. Is this person open minded? Do they have what I call a beginner mindset, which means
Yeah.
instead of I know, somebody that can say, okay, I know about that, but let me see if I can add to with the information I'm gaining right now.
Well,
That's
it's
somebody I can help.
interesting. There's a lot of people out there that think they have it all figured out when they don't. And like I told you, I own a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school, and I can't tell you how many times I get a new student. And, I'm a second-degree black belt. I've been training 20 years. I know a lot. So if I stop you to tell you you're doing something wrong, don't correct me back and tell me that you are doing something correctly. That's one of my big pet peeves. And I'll stop somebody and just say, hey, right dead in the tracks. One of us is a coach, the other one's a student. Spend more time being a student and you'll get
Yeah.
better at this. And a lot of us think that we're experts in all facets of our lives, that we don't take the time to look at or register that somebody else might be a little bit more tuned in on something and be able to point us in a better direction. And that's a big one for me.
Yeah. And that's everything you're talking about right there, Christopher, is programming. Our programming goes back to the time we were kids and how we were raised and everything else. And we don't blame anybody, because everybody was doing the best they could for us and stuff. But
Yeah.
like some of the programming similar to what I talked about, or even like, we go to school, right? And you and I are in algebra class and we're given a
Yeah.
problem and we got to solve it. I go through that problem and I do all the work and everything, all the steps they teach, and I come up with the right answer. You,
Yeah.
on the other hand, you have a shortcut that comes to mind. You have this creative way of doing it, and you come up with the right answer. You get marked down because you didn't show all the work. So we're
Yeah.
actually penalized for that tapping to opening up that creativity within us in school.
Yeah.
Then we go forward in jobs and relationships, and as we go forward, we continue gaining this programming in us that really is robotic programming. So what it is, and so in that robotic programming, it makes complete sense.
Right.
You don't go for something unrealistic, because so many people are going for realistic. If you
Yeah.
want to do something, I'm not smart enough to come up with it, so I'm going to follow this guy's pathway because he figured it out and he's got the evidence of it and
Right.
stuff like that.
And a
It's
lot of
not.
the times that guy who's chasing his pathway isn't trying to help you get on his path. He's trying to get you to help you further his path. There's a saying that I love, is chase your dreams or someone will pay you to help chase theirs.
Yeah.
Is one of my favorite sayings. And it's that exact thing. Like, you can identify these great characteristics in a leader or a boss and really do everything you can to follow along with that. But until you go off on your own and try to do it, none of those skills, I don't think, really matter.
Yeah, yeah. So you would ask me about fear, and fear plays a major role. When I took my first run off of that 2,000-foot mountaintop with a hang glider, I was afraid.
How was that? Was it scary?
3 steps is all you get. They say you got to walk, jog, run, and they give you 3 steps to do it. So
First step is
walk.
walk.
I get the clearance. I'm holding the glider, and I can feel my heart.
Do you have somebody with you?
Huh?
You have somebody on your back, or is it?
No,
are you solo?
it's just me.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And so then I take the first step and I can feel my heartbeat start raising a little bit up in the air, And then I second step, and now I'm trying to get the running and stuff like that. And I got the last step, and everything inside of my mind is going, stop. And I could feel my heart beating in my throat.
Off the cliff.
And then I took that third step and I was in the air, and it was just, oh my God, the most incredible sensation. Literally, like, I love eagles. Literally felt like I was soaring,
Does the fear go away instantly once you're moving?
The moment my feet left the ground, there was no more fear.
Wow.
And that's what happens. That fear is only the what we're anticipating could go wrong, because what's in the subconscious mind tells us that in our head, in our thoughts. And so we're thinking of all the things that could go wrong. But once my feet leave the ground and the hang glider starts getting that flight going, and it's like, Oh my
It's
God, this is
quiet.
incredible. And it was just so,
Yeah.
and I've done 7 of those launches out of the 15 I need to do to finish my
How
certification.
was landing?
Well, my first one, I landed on my feet, which was awesome. And then I had a
Okay.
couple where I landed on the little wheels, and then another one on the
Okay.
feet. So it takes a little bit of, but yeah,
Right.
and so with that, so there is fear, but what I find more than fear is discomfort.
Yes.
We're so used to doing things a certain way based on that subconscious program, we don't even realize we're doing it.
Yeah. Discomfort.
Wallace
Most of our
Wallace,
choices are made through the discomfort part of it.
it is. Wallace has a quote I love. If you are not consciously choosing to be rich, excellent, and healthy, then you are
Hmm.
unconsciously choosing to be poor, mediocre, and unhealthy. And that unconsciously
Wow.
living is just living through the programming over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so what it is I tell people at the beginning, you're going to have to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable to change your life. I
Right.
imagine with the martial arts you teach, people have
Yeah.
to be able to become uncomfortable to get down the movements and everything else
One
because
of
our
the
body's not used to moving that way and things like that.
one of the biggest sayings in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is getting comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Yes.
The more you put yourself in this, like we'll take an example of a rear naked choke. Someone on your back, they got their legs around you and they have their arm around your neck and the other one's behind your head and they're choking you. Really scary when you first start. But you get put in that chokehold hundreds of times over years. It's not so scary anymore. And now you have time to think about your counter, how you're going to think about your defense to get out of it, where I'm going to proceed to once I get out of that. Like you can have that whole process while you're still being choked, and it changes it. It's because when you first start that fear or uncomfortableness would make you tap right away. But even been in it enough times that uncomfortable part's not there anymore, and it through repetition. And so you're teaching these skills of how to become comfortable in uncomfortable situations, whether and regardless of whatever the situation is, because you're identifying it each different for every client.
Yeah.
But working through that part is the hardest part, and that subconscious. The subconscious part, I think, is what most people are unaware of at all times. When I was younger, I would hear somebody talk about their authentic self or their true self, and I would think that I'm like, well, that guy's kind of kooky. And now I look at that person as they have identified those subconscious things and they're not afraid to move past them.
Yeah. And it's great. You and I sitting here right now talking to each other about, uncomfortableness. That's great. And people can look at it and they can go, oh, yeah, I'm willing to be uncomfortable. When that uncomfortableness steps up and shakes your entire being because you're so used to that program, it's so entrenched within your being of not who you are, but how you are. How you act and react, how you make decisions, how you do things like that. It's uncomfortable to go through those things. And I'll tell you, I've been doing this for, 4 decades now. I've been coaching it for over a decade. I've developed this method, and I still have to be willing to get uncomfortable at times to continue growing.
Sure. Because if you want to be the best coach, the best coaches I have met, because I get a lot of TEDx talkers, a lot of success coaches, they're always the people that are still on the field playing, and they're usually their best clients. But, like if you can't get yourself to any of these places, why should anyone listen to you in the first place?
Yeah.
And if you're constantly evolving and finding new ways to think about stuff and new ways to do things, how long ago was that first flight?
Oh, about 2 years ago.
Okay. And do you remember your thoughts as you were walk, skip, run, or whatever the 3 steps were going to the edge? Like, what was your thought process? Like, obviously you knew you were there to fly and you knew you were there to do solo, but there's that last little 10 seconds of like, hey, what am I going to do here and why am I doing it? And do you recall your thoughts?
Oh yeah. Because you have to put the glider together, right? It comes, you got to take it out of the bag, build it up, everything else, do the pre-check and everything. And then, like I said, they're going, okay, it's good. You pick it up and you stand there and you take some breaths, and I almost couldn't breathe. Like I was like, and then I go clear, and I start going, and I like I told you, I took that first step, man. The fear, and through the whole time in my head, I'm hearing, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And as I started getting
your body's screaming at you.
The second step, by the third step, it was screaming in my head that, and And I think honestly, the only reason I continued through is because I already had the momentum going. And it's like if I stop now, man, I'm already really one step away from the edge here. So and
Yeah.
and then went but like I said, as soon as I left the ground and the glider did what it's designed to do, it was
Yeah.
like, oh my God. I think I smiled ear to ear all the way down. It's
It's
so
kind of
cool.
like riding a motorcycle, right? Like
It
think of the
is.
training you do when you learn how to ride a motorcycle. I went to safety school twice. I had motorcycles when I was young, and then when I started riding again about 6 years ago, I went back to safety school. And there's always that fear of that first ride on the road by yourself. Because now, like, you understand the mechanics of what you're doing and the processes, but now you're putting it all together and you're kind of on your own. And it's kind of like after you're done or while you're in the process of coaching somebody, and now you're kind of kicking them out of the nest and they got to fly on their own and they have to apply all those skills. Do you find that
Yes and no.
people, yeah, but do you find that people who have a lot of these self limitations and they become aware of it, does it change their lives completely? Because they're going to
Mm,
take that from the business world into their regular life as well, I would assume.
You have to.
Yeah.
People talk about, I'm just focused on my business. You can't focus just on your business. Whatever happens internally, whatever changes happen, whatever, shifts we make, and it's going to carry out in every area of your life.
Yeah.
So
And so for you to start connecting this, um, does your son, for example, does he have the benefit of all your knowledge that you had collecting all this stuff all the years? Because I find that the more in tune I become with myself, the better a parent I become because I can share that knowledge with my kids and shortcut them to success.
now, I will tell you, my son's 29. He just turned 29 in April.
Mm,
Yes, he came out of school. He kind of went to college later, so he came out of college later. And within his first year in business, he shot immediately the top producer. He's gone to another
wow.
organization now, and now he's getting the better pay and things like that. And again, he's right up there at the top of the producers and things like that. But 5 years ago, no, he wouldn't get much out of it because he wouldn't listen to it because he knew everything about life and what he had to do and everything else. And I was full of shit. And, but
Yeah.
now he looks at it and goes, man, Dad, I'm so glad you're my dad.
It's interesting how that changes, right?
It is.
And
Well,
so you've
maturity.
been, yeah, and you've been voted top business coach multiple times in a row, and then I guess if
5 years.
5 times, is that in the last 5 years in a row, or
Yeah.
is it
From
okay? And
2021,
and
4 more behind me from 2021 through 2025.
and how does that become determined that you are a top success coach? Is it based on your clientele success? What is it based on, and how do you get
Results
to that
with my
level?
clients.
Okay. And how do they measure that though to put you in the top 10 or 20 or whatever the number is
They
that
measure
you're
how
in?
much growth they've had. Again, because it's business, they look at business, how much business growth have
Sure.
you had, positive profit, profitable business growth that you've experienced in the
Okay.
and then in the time period
Yeah.
that you've experienced it.
And as you're becoming more aware of these limitations with the subconscious, what types of things do you start doing to learn how to get people to work past that? Do you have a mentor who you work with? Do Yeah, you
I
look like you're about to
continue to
say
work
something.
in mastermind groups. I continue to have, yeah, I work with a coach. They've always told me from the time I started doing this, best coaches have coaches. So I always
Yeah.
have somebody that I can lean on because they can still see things in me. Like
Hmm.
like we talk about programming, but there's different levels of that programming, right? So the
Yeah.
programming that got me successful and built this business that I have now and launching an institute to certify other coaches in the method I developed and everything else is at a level, but I'm not done. So as I
Yeah.
go forward, there's underlying, so we'll work through that conditioning to get, to those levels. But yeah, they still can help me point some stuff out. Before COVID hit, I had recovered, I had met or exceeded really what my corporate salary was with the benefits and everything
Okay.
else. And it was just, and then COVID hit, boom. I had
All
13
right.
or 14 events drop in one day, and all of a sudden the bottoms, the floors falling out of it.
Yeah.
And
You see your dream walking away from you.
well, what I did is I went back into that working my ass off. Okay, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do all those things, that massive actions, exhaustive efforts. I'll start going
Yeah.
till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and doing something. I literally burned through a team that I had 3 people leave my organization because of how frantic I was going at everything and stuff like that.
Because you were taking steps backwards.
What I was doing was trying to put it together based on massive actions, exhaustive efforts, instead of getting the alignment going. COVID tapped into some deep-rooted programming that was inside of me, always watch for the other foot to fall, things like that, and stuff that I wasn't even aware of. It didn't even show up in the growth and the walk away from there and the build up of this business. Now all of a sudden it started showing up. So once I took time, one of the ways I changed that is I was working with a coach and I talked to him. He goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "Well, I'm putting together this and I'm doing this and I'm doing," and he goes, "Ho, stop it. Go pack up your truck and go freaking hang gliding and get away for a few days."
Clear your head.
I did. And now I'm out there and I'm going through it. And I finally, I'm getting a couple more launches here and there, but and so as I'm doing that, I'm putting the glider together on top of the mountain one time, getting ready to go. And my phone rings and the answer, it's somebody out of the blue that wanted me to work with them.
Wow.
And I almost signed the person right there as a client while I'm putting the hang glider together. And it's when I get out of my own way, and that's part of it. We're programmed. If something's not working, a business, anything in life that we're trying to do, if it's not working, what do? We try harder. We put in more hours.
Yeah. Beat your head against the wall harder.
Which actually works against us. It makes it even harder to hit that whatever result is we're aiming for. So when we back away from that, most business owners I work with, when we start, I have to get them to throttle back a little bit because they're going so hard at it that there's opportunities passing by them all day long that they're not even noticing because they're doing 150 miles an hour.
Do you watch UFC or boxing or anything along those lines?
I do, yeah.
So think about when, you have 2 fighters in the cage. One guy starts to see a little bit of success, or he knows the guy's hurt on his feet, the other guy. What do? They start swinging harder and just keep swinging harder and swinging harder. And the guys that have the most success at finishing guys are the patient ones who sit back for a second and they think about, what do I need to do next to finish this fight versus just keep doing the same thing I'm doing. And that's what it sounds like you tapped into is that moment where, you saw your business fading away or whatever was happening, like it diminishing, not fading away, and desperately want to hang on to it. So you start swinging harder for the fences. And before you know it, there's no energy left in those arms. You're not thinking the same way because everything's frantic all of a sudden, right? You're not the calm in the storm anymore. You're the storm itself.
Yes.
And was that a real eye opener for you?
Oh yeah, that was like, I didn't even realize I had shifted back into that. Because that's how I was early on in the first couple of decades of learning this stuff. I was traveling 3,000 to 5,000 miles every week trying to develop territories, running and gunning. I would drive until 3 o'clock in the morning to the next place I wanted to get to. I'd stop, sleep until 7, get up and go start making calls. I'd do the same thing like over and over and over again, so with that, so we talked about that with the uncomfortable, and that's another part of our programming is that we got to figure it out, right? That's something else, like in our generation, we were told, if you want something, you got to figure out how to do it. You got to figure. We don't. But it's not like that. It's not where we gotta kill ourselves to try to get to what we want to get. And our life isn't about trading off the next 20 years of building a business successful, and then once we get there, that carrot living. It's not about that carrot, but so many people live by that.
A lot of people look at the destination and they're not so concerned about the journey sometimes.
Well, there's that too, where you pass, you pass through Yep.
Right. And so when you're meeting clients for the first time, and I'm assuming there's probably people you say no to because not every coach is right for every person that needs coaching. Is there times where you look at somebody's situation and say, maybe I'm not the right guy, and you point them in another direction? And do you run into times where people are so in their way they don't realize what you're pointing out to them? Does that happen?
Yeah. Now, yes. I won't not work with somebody like that. They take more effort. I won't not work with somebody as long as they have that willingness. Here's what I love to hear. Here's an ideal client.
Hmm.
Why are you in this situation? You know what? I really don't know. That's
Yeah.
somebody I can help. Because here's the other side of it. We talked about the fear. We talked about the confusion, the uncomfortableness and stuff like that. The other area run into a lot is a victim. And everybody hates considering themselves a victim. But I was on a
Yeah.
mastermind yesterday and they said, who's an ideal client for you? I said, any business owner that says, I can't grow my business because anyone who says that, that would be an ideal
Yeah.
client for me to have a
They
talk
throw
to
that
anyway.
limiting
Because
factor on
what we do is
themselves.
we blame the state of the economy, we blame competition, we blame all these other things of why we
Yeah.
can't do something. But we've seen businesses make their greatest strides in a down economy, and we see so
Sure.
many businesses that struggle during a boom. So it's not about the outside situations and circumstances.
Right.
It's about what's the inside programming telling us.
And so when you take on a client, is there a time factor that is set? Are you saying, okay, we're looking at success in whatever amount of months, or is everybody going at their own pace? Like,
Yeah, the way I work, I
what are
mean,
the parameters you set for someone?
yeah, well, I typically will work with a client for 12 months. And the way I have it broke down is we spend 12 weeks getting to do the initial tools and things like that stuff. But what we're really doing is identifying that programming that's causing limitation and then
Yeah.
working with the tools to start shifting that. So we spend 12 weeks doing that. In that process, every client I've ever worked with starts seeing some elevation in whether it's changing their financial situation, whether it's bettering their relationship, whether it's, building their business, things like that. And
Yeah.
then from there, we go into a 6-month program where it's all about now we know these tools, we've seen evidence of them, and we really start putting them together in a hockey stick ramp pace. So it's
Okay.
all
So it's
about that
skyrocketing.
launch. Yes, it's all about that rapid launch into it. And we start processing those. Now, when I
Yeah.
started doing this, I would stop at 9 months. And I noticed
Okay.
people would go away and all of a sudden I'd hear from them again. They're going, man, like business is kind of going backwards and this. And what I realized I was missing in that is there was no handoff. There was no transference. I was a
Right.
coach to all of a sudden they're on their own. There was never
Yeah.
that transference. Okay, now you do this and I support you in it. And so
Right.
now I do
You're
another three
maintaining the
months.
relationship further.
Well, we spend another 12 weeks
Yeah.
really doing that handoff with like a process way of doing it where now they're taking the ownership, they're applying it, and I'm there as support to them to
They're
help
owning
them
all
iron
the
out
tools.
the minor things that are happening in it that
Yeah.
are
So you're going into their garage and you're opening their toolbox and getting rid of the 30 hammers they have in their toolbox, and you're replacing them with the ones they need for the right jobs and teaching them how to use it, and then putting them back on the road with the new toolbox, and they see some success.
I'm actually helping them develop how many of those hammers do you need and then what else do you need to do this.
Okay. And do you find that, obviously, like, we're talking about the business part of it, but do people realize when the non-business stuff starts changing as well? Are they coming to you for that as well? And are they acknowledging, like, okay, well, I've applied this skill over here in business and I'm doing it over here, and those skills that you've consciously made them learn are now their subconscious skills, because you're basically trading out the subconscious parts,
Yeah.
right? And they start to apply that subconscious new skill in other parts of their lives, and do you teach them how to become aware of those things when they're changing?
Yeah, as we become aware of it, if we're somebody like I work with people personal development as well, but if I'm working
Yeah.
with a business owner, I've had business owners who have completely changed around how they parent, how they act in their marriage, how they act in their community, things like that, and everything
Yeah.
else, based on growing their business. Because it's
That's a
not
pretty good
again,
feeling,
it's
right?
never, huh?
That's
Excuse
a
me?
pretty good feeling, right?
Yeah. Oh man, God, it would put me in tears when somebody has a breakthrough moment. Oh my God,
Yeah.
it's just incredible, Christopher, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. It for me, it's always interesting because I have the pleasure of working with people for years, and I'll see a guy come in who's scared of his own shadow, and then 4 or 5 years from there, he's a higher belt and he's a murderer, and he doesn't even think. And if he had ever met that guy he was before, he would hate him. Like, I
Yeah.
think of who I was back in the day. I started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I want to learn how to fight. And over the years, it became a way of thinking my way through things. It became a way of how I process things, how I interact with the world. And if I were to go back and meet myself now I don't think I would like that guy a whole lot. Like he's probably a little cocky. He's a little bit of an asshole sometimes, but we change. And I like the version of me now. And the only reason I do that is because I learned all of these new skills that
Yes.
were subconsciously part of my life now, or
You
are
went through a
subconsciously part of my,
transformation.
yeah. So when you're
You
helping these
become a
people
better version of you.
yes.
That's what it's
And
all
so,
about.
right. And so you're learning all these things that you're sharing with folks. Um, what is your biggest joy that you get out of this? Obviously, for me, like doing something good for somebody is to me is very pleasing, but it's extremely selfish in its own way because I love doing it. So when I see these successes, I selfishly enjoy watching these successes. Like I have a guy who started with me last year. He's won 2 years ago. He's won every tournament he's gone into. Like just straight out, like not even a challenge of whatever divisions he. And I recently promoted him. And he looked at me and he goes, "Well, now I'm in a harder division." I said, "No, you're not." I said, "You already have all the skills for that division. Like when you're going into this tournament." And for me, I get tremendous joy watching this guy identify, like, oh, you know what? I do have it. And like, there's no reason for me to be scared because I've already got the things I need. I'm just going to a higher level with it.
Yeah. Yeah. When I see one of my clients, when I first start working with somebody, I come out of the gate developing what the SMT method calls a dynamic vision, and we
Yeah.
won't go into all the details of it and stuff like that. But so we get clarity around what it looks like. What's it feel like to live at that end point of where you want to get to the result? What's that? And we
Yeah.
get a lot of clarity around that. Well, as we're developing that, it bumps into those patterns and paradigms because the one client who went from 7.5 to 22 million, all they wanted to do was get to $10 million from 7.5. And so in
Yeah.
developing that vision, I help push them a little bit into and get it to 12.5. And at first they're going, no, I don't want to do that. I have to work too hard. So we go through that. And right there, what they do is they start listing the programming of
Yeah.
why they can't or why they shouldn't. And so now we can start shifting that. And we start shifting that. And all of a sudden they agreed. They started getting some excitement around the 12.5. And within 3.5, 4 months, let's say 4 months,
Yeah.
they achieved the 12 million. And now they're going,
Which
oh
is
my
crazy
God.
because in the blip of a lifetime, like it's just a blip. I
Yeah,
mean,
it is.
you think of 3 to 4 months is nothing over the course of a lifetime, and
Yes.
people aren't that patient these days. Like I go on Amazon and I order something. If I can't have it the same day, I'm not buying it, right? And
Done
that's the way
that.
a
I've
lot of
ordered
people
it and
work
found
these
out when
days.
the delivery date was and canceled it.
Yes,
We
yeah.
live in a
Oh, you're
fast
not
food
delivering it
world.
tomorrow at 8 a.m. I don't want it.
Yeah, yeah, yep. We don't
So
need
to
that, man.
to develop these skills and to learn from a coach like you have to have a little bit of patience. And is that part of the learning process as well as you identifying where people have a little bit of impatience or lack of focus and dialing them in a little bit to kind of bring that skill to a higher level?
Yeah, because there's a finite line in there between impatience and frustration that leads to just
Yeah,
giving up.
right.
So I got to allow somebody to have that, but then be able to bring them back around the other side and have tools to do that with. And yeah, the way I coach today is completely different than how I did a decade ago.
Okay. And what advice would you give to you from a decade ago?
It would have told me to lean more into the possibilities with those people back then
Okay.
rather than trying to talk them out of their frustration.
Okay. And where do you think that change took place? Was it somewhere like 5 year mark where you changed your thought process? 8 years, 10 years was,
No, I think it
and
was
and,
earlier
and when
on
it
than that.
changed, were you aware?
Probably within the first year, because I had clients that were like really gung ho and doing it and things like that. And then I had people that were not
Yeah,
just because well, it's all programming, but they were bumping into that programming that goes, this is getting too hard. This is getting too hard.
yeah,
And I have clients on both sides. So I had to look at that and go, why is that? And it
yeah,
wasn't that I was doing something different as a coach. They're just different people than the people on, the other ones. So
yeah.
then
So
I
you
had to
change
start
your mindset and
adapting
how
and
you
going,
treat each person.
how do I help this
Is that
person?
where you
How do
throw
I
the
help this
blueprint
person?
away?
What's that?
Is that when you throw the blueprint away and say, okay, each person needs to be treated a little different?
No, because it was even when I first started coaching, I knew what I went through in getting coaching
Yeah,
and how those. I just got tired of saying, man, I'm trying to be somebody else too hard now. And I just
Okay.
wasn't willing to do that anymore. So when people were coming to me and I started noticing that difference, I had to look, I was able to look at it the same way, which is why it didn't take all that long, is they're just being who they are.
Yeah.
So if I'm expecting them to be different, I'm not the right person to coach them. So now how
Okay.
do I take it from where they are and still help them?
Yeah. And so what do you see with your business moving forward? Are you looking at bigger changes? Like, how does a business like yours grow? Obviously, you can only handle a certain number of people. Do you have a whole group of people that work underneath of you, or is it strictly you? You are the whole business and you're coaching. Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, so one of the areas is I do coach other coaches. I've helped coaches who go out and get certified and this and that.
Yeah.
And a lot of certifications just go, okay, now you're certified, go build your business. And that's what they
Okay.
get, you know. So I help them get to start going, get things in alignment, get things happening, go through that reprogramming and such. And then one of the other things I mentioned earlier coming up is I'm launching an institute to certify other coaches in the SMT method and its
Okay.
programs. So now it can impact it can like greatly increase the impact that my life works has now, and even after I'm gone, it can be my legacy that continues on.
Yeah, and how do you identify someone who should be a coach? Have there been times where you've met someone and they've had a lot of success, maybe didn't see the coaching thing as part of their life, and have you had conversation where you're like, maybe you should take this
Yeah.
opportunity to use these skills and help someone else? Does that happen often?
Oh yeah, because I work with people who are in jobs and they can't stand it and they have no freaking idea what they want to do. And so
Yeah,
as we start eyeing that, as we start going through the program, they go, man, I really like what you do. Like I'd really
yeah.
like to look into that. And then so yeah, I've had people who've gone into coaching and stuff. I don't
Well, it's
here's one of the
funny.
things I don't do, Christopher. I don't ever decide for anybody what they should do, how they should do it, or
Sure.
anything else. That's one of the
Okay.
things I really stand tall on and really kind of like tightened on, you know, as far
Yeah.
as how I do things.
They have to
I
identify what they want to get the most out of it.
I what I'm really good at doing is helping people identify what is it they truly desire. And then I'm good at helping them identify the blocks coming up and the tools to shift those.
Sorry about that. I had our timer set, so we
Yeah,
have,
yeah.
I think, 5 more minutes. So with your coaching, when is that new program going to take place, and how do people find you, and how do they become part of your program? Like, how do you foresee that part of your new system taking place?
New
Is
system
is
with
it a
this with
12
the institute.
with the institute? Is it a coaching program over a certain amount of months? Is it, are you developing them in the same way you do in your private coaching? Are you taking whatever skills they have and refining them? And is it over a course of I don't know, however, how does the program work, and how does somebody become,
Nobody would ever be certified to coach the SMT method without experiencing it for themselves. So part of the
yeah,
certification will be to take them through that. Part of the certification will be taking them in as far as the coaching principles that we follow and things like that, and how we coach and all of that stuff, and really kind of helping them. I don't want to say become me, but doing it
right,
in their own way, but cover the essentials that make
yeah,
a difference in people's results and stuff. But right now, I work with clients every day. I have some of my clients who are coaches who have taken through the program, and although we don't have the certification ID completely yet, they've had that
yeah,
experience. They've had that life change. So now I will use them in the 12-week program, or the 12-week program at
okay,
the end, or things like
yeah,
that, where it allows me to handle and get to personally work with a larger percentage of people than I would be able to do all on my own. So we have that
yeah,
stuff happening, and anybody can go to coachwithjoey.com and schedule a 15-minute call with me. It's not a sales
okay,
call, and just talk about what I do. Talk about if you're stuck someplace. Talk about if you have no
yeah.
idea why you're experiencing it the way you're experiencing, but you don't want to experience life that way, and we'll talk about it.
That's amazing. And like, I have 9 black belts underneath of me, and they're guys of all different ages, all different body types, different skill sets. They all know the stuff I know, but they all have a different style. They all apply it to themselves. And one of the things I always encourage in my students is take the information I gave you and find a way to mold it to the best way that works for you. Right?
Yes.
I have a guy who just opened a gym. He's a brown belt under me. He just opened a gym in South Jersey. He's 6'5" and 300 pounds. our bodies do not move the same way.
Yeah.
And he's got to figure out his own game. And that's what I like about what you just said about your coaching, is that you're not trying to mold anyone into who you are. You're giving them the schools or the skills that you have, and allowing them to mold it into whoever they are. And for me, that's the best kind of coach. Like, don't be this guy, be yourself, and share that with me.
In any area of life, that's really the way to get the furthest. Anytime we got to contort ourselves to be like somebody else, to do things somebody else does, things like that, it's never got sustainability long term to it, because we always got to act as if we're that person. And it's just not something that lasts as long as being ourselves and shifting it. I used to work with a lot of MLM companies, and the high level person would bring me in to work with all those people and get them going and stuff like that. And what I would tell people is, and realtors, the same thing. You know what? Take that sheet of paper of all the shit they told you got to do and throw it away. Now, let's talk. What kind of things do you like to do? Do you like doing social media live? Do you like going door to door? Do you like doing webinars and lunch and learns? Like, what do you like to do? Let's figure that out. Now let's start doing that more often, and those people will grow.
Do the things that you're good at and that you love, and the things that you're enthusiastic about, and your life will go a lot better in all aspects.
We've heard that forever, but people just say, that's bullshit. But it's not really.
It's not at all.
Maybe here's one of the things I have found, even with a lot of the things we have with like manifesting, things like that, and everything. It's all taught as a one size fit all. If you say the affirmation and I say the affirmation, we're both supposed to get the same thing, but we don't, because our programming is separate from each other. So we have to, even with the SMT method, when we start talking about things, positive self-talk, things like that, it has to be tailored to that person. It has to be tailored to their programming, because otherwise the subconscious will just reject it.
Right. And it just won't work at all.
So we have to work it in a way and word it and craft it in a way that fits that uniqueness of that person.
Yeah. Well, I enjoyed this conversation. I can see why you're very successful at what you do. And one of the things I like to do when I talk to people is I don't want to learn too much about the person before I speak to them. I like to learn about it on the fly, because that's more interesting to me. And I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. I know you have to run in a second. Where can people find you, like your official websites? How can they contact you? What's the best way to contact you? Do you have any books coming out? Whatever you want to push, just mention it now, and we'll share it.
Thanks, Christopher. I talked about the coachwithjoey.com. It's a 15-minute conversation. We just get in there, you kind of talk about what you want to talk about. You get to know me a little bit, things like that. I'll make sure my whole thing there is to serve in that conversation. I don't even talk about my programs or none of that. I have a book that's coming out here within the next, 3 weeks from today that we're talking. It's reprogramming your subconscious mind, the SMT method to rapid results. And it's really packed and powerhouse. And I'll put something out for your listeners. Anybody schedules a 15-minute call with me, I'll give them a free copy of the book.
Okay, fantastic.
As a way of thanking you.
I really appreciate that.
Walks away with more. But yeah, my website, we'll put a link, because otherwise I'll tell you it's josephadrolshagen.com.
I'll throw that in.
But my website, social media, all that, it's
all right. Well, hang on one sec. I just want to wrap up with you real quick. I'm going to hit stop. Hang on one sec.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed that conversation. I'm more of a